Potch.
I'm going to hear from Ruth Dyson. Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Normally I'd say I'd be pleased to be taking a call on a bill that talked about more flexibility in social housing, but unfortunately the title bears little relevance to anything in the bill, particularly to Part 2. But before I speak to the specifics, and I want to speak particularly about clauses 20 and 21 in Part 2, I just want to talk about why members of Parliament come to Parliament, why we seek to spend our Fridays debating in this House, and our Saturdays for that matter. And actually it's because every single member of Parliament, regardless of their party, I think comes to Parliament because they think they can make a positive difference. They think they can make a positive contribution to a better New Zealand. So regardless of what their party is, that I think is the driver behind all members of Parliament's intention. One of the things that we have been particularly proud of in New Zealand is our commitment to social housing. And that's because as egalitarian New Zealanders, we think that it's just right, it's fair, that people should have a warm, dry, affordable home and be able to stay there and be part of their community. That's been an integral part of the fabric of our society for nearly a century. Since this Parliament first debated the introduction of social housing, and it's something that I'm particularly proud of, especially when you go to other countries where you see people living in appalling conditions. Of course we have state houses that are very run down in New Zealand. We have whole areas where we'd like to see a lot of improvement done. But wouldn't it be great, Mr Chairman, if this Parliament could regain the sense of unity that we had 80 years ago when we introduced social housing and said, how can we do this better for the future? The National Party instead is saying we don't think it's government's responsibility to operate state housing anymore. We think we should sell it off. Well, I don't agree with that. I don't agree that it is a valid role of housing providers to provide social housing with the government completely out of the picture. Social housing providers have always worked in partnership with central government, and long may that partnership continue, whether it's the Salvation Army or Comcare or Methodist Mission, Presbyterian Support, any number of organisations that have done their bit alongside the government to provide warm, dry, affordable houses so that every member of our society can be safe and can be part of a contributing community. That's not the aim of this at all. So clauses 20 and 21 specifically outline the further withdrawal of Housing New Zealand from a very critical part of providing social housing, and that is in policy advice and also in research and monitoring. How do we know what works and what doesn't if Housing New Zealand, the very agency that was responsible for providing social housing, is no longer providing policy advice to the government about social housing or doing any monitoring or research? How can we say our aim is to do things better in future if we're not getting any policy advice about how things are working at the moment? I want to challenge the backbench of the National Party to explain why they are putting their personal name alongside a bill that privatises social housing and that says that Housing New Zealand will no longer be responsible for policy advice or for research and monitoring. Mr Bishop, I'd recommend some reading for you. The bill would be a good starting place. The bill would be a really good starting place, because I am fed up of listening to interjections that are not truthful. They are not truthful, and your colleagues listen to them and think that when your untruths are repeated, they must be true. Well, actually, repeating something that isn't true doesn't make it true. In the bill, that is exactly what happens. Part 2 we're debating now, and I challenge Mr Bishop to stand on his hind legs and say that he has read the bill, that'd be a challenge, and then to explain what it does. How can this bill possibly be accused of providing more social housing, more flexibility, warm, dry homes, or, as Simon Bridges, the minister who was previously sitting in the chair, said, make time stop still? He said under Labor, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman.
Ian needs to go away.
Mr Chairman.